Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And I just want to tell you the reason why this show is what it's titled for tonight. Last week, I took a family vacation to Martha's Vineyard in the very blue state of Massachusetts. I stopped to speak with some ladies who were registering people to vote. And once they found out that I lived in North Carolina, they became highly animated because the national news had just broken about our current Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson, and his alleged messages on a porn website. They knew all about extremist MAGA candidate for superintendent of schools here in North Carolina as well. They were very up to date on their politics. They literally peppered me with questions because many people also know that they know of our very calm and efficient and effective Democratic governor, Roy Cooper. And they're scratching their heads wondering who's the real North Carolina? So, to solve some of those questions about North Carolina politics, I have two guests that can explain what's going on here in the Tar Heel State that is considered a must win for both the Democratic and Republican parties. I have my favorite state legislator in Forsyth County with us, Dr. Amber Baker. Um, Representative Baker is an educator, an advocate, a volunteer. She is a proven leader and is the state representative for District 72, which is Winston-Salem, North Carolina. She has served more than a decade as the principal at Kimberly Park School in Winston-Salem. Representative Dr. Baker is definitely someone our state should lean into when it comes to education. She received advanced training at the City of Winston-Salem University, the Harvard Institute for Academic Achievement, the National Institute for School Leaders, and the Ruby Payne Framework for Understanding Poverty. Dr. Baker is the vice chair of the Forsyth County Democratic Party's African American Caucus. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Baker.
How are you, Sister Pam? Glad to be back. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. All right, and we've got a hello in the chat already. Hello, Soror Loretta Thomas Walker. Thank you. All right. And so next up, we have Dr. Javita Lee. Dr. Lee is a native North Carolinian with a master's in public administration from the North Carolina Central University and a doctorate in education and organizational leadership from Gardner-Webb University. Currently, she serves as the policy director for Advanced Carolina and the program director for North Carolina Black Alliance. She is the convener of the North Carolina Black and Brown Policy Network of over 30 Black and Brown led organizations across the great state of North Carolina. She is the co-founder of Meredith College Black Alumni Collective and is the proud member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lee.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, positively. So, ladies, let's get into it. Oh, but I got to tell you this. Today, we had at my church, St. Joseph AME, we were honored to have Governor Wes Moore, the governor of the great state of Maryland, at the church today. And he brought forth a message about 36 more days. 36 more days. That's all the time we have to make it happen for a positive change and a direction for our nation. And that means, guys, up and down the ballot. And he was very inspiring gentleman. Dr. Baker, I'm going to start with you. Given that North Carolina is playing such a large role in this year's election, how do you think we're doing?
Well, first of all, let me say this. In North Carolina, we have 18 days. Early voting starts October 17th, and
Mm-hmm.
November 5th is the finish line. So we should not be pushing people towards November 5th. We should be pushing people to early vote from October 17th to November 2nd. And why do I say that?
Mm-hmm.
We just recently heard that they purged 700,000 registered voters.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah, so we need people to check their registration, check it daily. And we know that we have until October 11th to register to vote or fix any problems with our registration. However, comma, we
Mm-hmm.
can't register and vote during early voting. So that is why we are pushing people towards early voting and not November 5th, because November 5th is the finish line. So he is correct with that. But in North Carolina, we are definitely boots on the ground. People are organized, people are motivated, people are excited.
Mm-hmm.
But we still cannot rest on our laurels. And no matter how many fumbles they make, we have to
Mm-hmm.
assure people that we are not there yet, and we are going to continue to see shenanigans pop up from
Mm-hmm.
now to November 5th. So, to your question, people are motivated. And I will say this, that in talking to people all around the state, because I've been doing my part to make sure that of those 170 people that we have running, 119 on the Senate side out of 120, and
Mm-hmm.
all the Senate seats, that we give them as much support in these counties that have not had good representation or any representation to be able to vote for a Democratic candidate. And I think people are mobilized around that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you make me take a deep breath. I feel a little better. I totally
Let
believe
me
it.
say this again. We
Go ahead.
have not had I'm gonna say it again, 119 out of the 120 seats on the House side and
Mm-hmm.
all 50 of the seats in the Senate. So come on now, we out here hustling. That's why I'm saying to people, even people who are thought to be in safe seats or people who don't have contested races,
Mm-hmm.
like myself, I am still raising money, not for my campaign, but for us to make sure that we are supporting these other candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't flip some seats, and we only need to flip one, but I'm saying two or three, because we know what happened last time with that one seat cushion. We talked about this on the show before. But
Yes.
technically, we hold on to all the seats that we have, the 48 seats that we currently have in the House, and flip one, we break the supermajority. On the Senate side, they hold their seats and flip one, they break it on the Senate side. So it is doable. And it is doable in counties that we didn't think was in play before, because again, we are truly a purple state, which
Yes.
means that we give more attention to the extremists than we do in terms of people who are more moderate, which is why we have a Democratic governor and a Republican lieutenant governor.
We're gonna talk about him in a little bit. Okay. So, so Dr.
I don't want to.
Dr. Lee,
I'm
Dr.
not
Lee.
grown enough. I'm not grown enough for the stuff that he's into, but go ahead.
Oh, so Dr.
I'm
Lee, I met you
a
on a
girl.
Divine Nine call strategizing on what the Divine Nine organizations need to do to register people and to turn out the vote. How is it going? Do you feel that we have a momentum? Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So, in regards to the Divine Nine, I mean, our respective organizations are showing up and showing out. And that is one thing that I feel confident in, is that our organizations are stepping up to the plate when it comes to mobilization for this year's election. There has been so much interest and so many inquiries what more can I do? Like beyond strolling to the polls, beyond voter registration, is there anything else that I can do in regards to my organization, my chapter? And we've been getting those messages almost weekly. And so that's really inspiring to see. Just folks being motivated to know like it's going to take a lot more than the performative actions to make sure that our state goes in the correct direction. And so that's definitely been great. We've also had our faith organizations really step up to the plate as well. A lot of faith organizations across the state, whether they're coming through our apparatus or other organizations, are stepping up, giving folks rides to the polls. They're already getting that set up. So folks are in position to get the work done. But kind of to Representative Baker's point, we cannot let up. We can't get comfortable. There's nothing to be comfortable about right now. And so all of the efforts need to continue, need to heighten even more, and just being able to have that camaraderie and, organizations coming together and being like, we have one bottom line, one common goal. And so what can we put towards this common goal to make sure that we see it all through? And so I think we're in a good position, especially with our Divine Nine, with our faith. And also, I don't want to leave out our HBCUs as well. There's been so much energy on our respective campuses as well. Organizations coming, registering students, but also going beyond that, having real conversations. Just recently, we hosted brunch and ballots on one of our HBCU campuses. And then we also do something called an HBCU think tank on our 501c3 side. And so when we do that in partnership with Common Cause North Carolina, and that gives the opportunity for student leaders to have real conversations around politics, what's going on beyond just go vote. Why are we voting? What are the things that students care about? How can they plug in beyond just registration? And so having that multi-day conference and those robust conversations have really motivated our leaders to now we're seeing them set up their own events on campus to get students engaged on this is what we need to do ahead of election day, encouraging students to go vote early, all the things that we need to see. And so definitely our constituency organizations like the Divine Nine Faith and HBCUs have definitely been stepping up to the plate.
Okay. And Renee, your question is coming up, but I'm going to piggyback off of what Dr. Javetta Lee just said about how they're doing all this advocacy work with the young people. What do you guys think of? I'm a native of Detroit, and I keep seeing posts where these Black men in particular are saying the most ignorant things about Trump, that they think that somehow he's cool and he's going to do right by us and all of this type of thing. How do you address that, Dr. Baker, and then Javita? Because I'm sure you really hear Javita. You've dealt with it. What do you think about that?
I think that if you as a man cannot vote for a woman, then you should say that.
Okay.
I think that is really at the root of all of this, because the things that they're saying simply don't make sense and don't add up. I also think that the Democratic Party has to own some of it, because their failure to put Black people and Black men in particular in the position of being a priority to this party has also caused some of this disgruntledness. I think that's how we lost the rural communities, because we were only focused on a segmented population of our party, and that's how we lost the rural communities. And I think that's my opinion. I think the Black men they're disenfranchised, and makes them feel seen. Even though the stuff that he says is ludicrous, but he understands marketing by saying, I identify with Black men because now I'm being railroaded by the judicial system. Seen. I am selling these gold sneakers because I know that's important to the Black community. That's being seen. It doesn't matter that it's ludicrous, but some Black men are feeling seen by him, and therefore they are identifying. And I do think that there is some misogynistic viewpoints towards VP Harris that will not allow them to vote for a woman, much less a woman of color.
Mm.
And so that's kind of my take on it. Because I spent a lot of time in the barbershops, and I will
Mhm.
tell you that that conversation, I do a series of community talks called Cuts and Cuties, conversations in the community, and they're happening in beauty shops and barbershops and beauty salons. And I spent a lot of time, even before this election. It's one of the ways that I stay connected and engaged in communities. And you're not hearing that talk as much um, in real places where black men are, like the barbershop. That's not the conversation that they're having about supporting Trump. They see him, they get him, but I do hear a lot about why should we continue to support the Democratic Party when the Democratic Party has not supported us. And so I do think that's a compounding issue that at some point as a party we've got to address.
Wow. Dr. Lee, your
Yeah, I
thoughts?
think yeah, I think Dr. Baker definitely hit the nail on the head. Kind of thinking about the fact of black men being seen by some of the comments that former President Trump has made. I think also misogyny is absolutely at the core. Trying to, kind of balance, like, am I going to be a man first, or am I going to be black? And so I've seen a lot of those conversations take place
Mhm.
where it was a choice of manhood over blackness.
Mhm.
And so, because whatever it kind of took to avoid having to grapple with the fact that I would be casting my ballot for a woman.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, there's still a lot of mindsets that are not comfortable with that fact. They can't really fathom the fact that, the leadership of this country potentially could be in the hands of a woman, and citing things like, saying uncomfortability around emotion, like how do we know that there's going to be a level of stability in her leadership, and just
Mhm.
different questions that aren't rooted in fact. It's just all around just, I'm just simply not comfortable with the fact or the possibility
Mhm.
of a woman being in leadership. And kind of to Representative Baker's point, we just need to say that out loud.
Mhm.
And so a lot of folks are not saying the quiet parts out loud. They're trying to blame it on something else, but really that's the core of it. And I think,
Mhm.
also I've seen a high level of the questioning of her blackness from black men. It's, well, how do I heard this rumor, I heard that really her father isn't from Jamaica or whatever the case. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, where's this rooted, or where's this coming from? And so a lot of those conversations, even on social media, and we have to note that social media is now the news platform. We're not getting our news from the television. That is not where the average person gets their news. And so we're thinking about TikTok, we're thinking about Twitter, thinking about Instagram. That's where their information is coming from. And so if you see this cyclical conversation of questioning her blackness, questioning if she's stable enough, her womanhood versus their manhood, all of those conversations are taking place on the platforms where they're consuming the most amount of their information. And so a lot of that is being embedded into their minds and into their being, into their thinking, just because of how they engage.
And
Mhm.
the irony of all of that is, we heard a little bit about that um, with Obama, or maybe a lot of it, but it was an internal conversation about questioning whether or not he was black, whether or not his daddy was truly African and his mother is white.
Right.
We did that. That was a part of the conversation, but it was not an internal. Meaning, it was not black people that was questioning his identity. It was definitely more external in terms of outside of our community. And we know, in fact, that the birtherism issue is what Trump ran on. But again,
Yes.
it wasn't around whether or not he was a black man or a man of color. It was around, is he even American? So even the irony that now they are questioning um, Vice President Harris's color. What does that have to do with her
Within,
ability
Right.
yeah.
to do the job? Right, like the most overqualified person, male or female, to ever run for this office, and yet we're still questioning her ability to run this country. And sometimes I push back on my brothers when they want to talk about questioning her leadership. But I just kindly say to them, but Black women have been running households and have been holding this community together and our people together since time, since the
Yes.
beginning of time. And so,
Yes.
why would you want to call into question a Black woman's ability to lead in this country when, in fact, Black women are holding this country, this party, and indeed our communities down and have been and will always do that. And she is no different. And I tell people I went to Howard with her. She came in, we came in together, we lived in the hall for 2 years together.
Okay.
I'm not
I
a person.
didn't know
Yeah, I can't say that, I can say we knew each other in school. We didn't
that.
keep that connection over the years. But what I will tell you is this, that when you come out of Howard, you
Mm-hmm.
are already prepared to lead nations. And she's no different. So if you want to question her Blackness, she went to the Mecca and where you are allowed to be. You can be 1/4 Black, but you still Black. And you're going to be in touch with that Blackness. You
Mm-hmm.
hear her story. She talks about the instant, her being, her social issues and her commitment to doing what's right was instilled by both her mother and her father. We often hear people talk about her mother, but she has also talked about her father. So you don't get to where she's gotten to if you're not overqualified for everything that you have run for or everything that you have accomplished, because we know as people we've
Mm-hmm.
got to work twice as hard, get up twice as early, do twice as much just to be considered. And
Mm-hmm.
to know that even in being considered, your qualifications are always going to be called into question. So if they vote, which my question is, have you already voted? Have you voted in the past? Are you intending on voting, or are you just contributing to the detriment of us losing a race because you just sitting here spewing stuff uninformed? So I come back at them very hard. AT,
Mm-hmm.
I seen that comment, Davis. So I'm just saying we cannot continue to entertain that, because if they vote, we
Mm-hmm.
know Black men is the smallest voting block.
Mm.
Are you gonna even vote while you sitting here running your mouth, calling her into question? So I tell people, I haven't been saved all my life. So sometimes when you sitting in the barbershops, you gotta know we got to take off that Dr. Baker and that representative hat off and just come as Baker. Sometimes you have to code switch and come right at them like that. I mean, they allow you into that space, and so when you come into that space, you got to be prepared to come back at them. So I know that was a long response, but we don't have time to try to convince people. If you're gonna vote for that food, then you vote for them. We're gonna work twice as hard to get the people who don't realize that they need to vote, and who are open to voting. That's where we got to spend our energy at this point.
Okay. So listen, we're gonna talk about you know who right now. So
Yeah.
Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson over he serves as the state Senate president. He has power in both the legislative and executive branches of state government. He is next in power in government in this great state of North Carolina. How, pray tell, did we get him as our lieutenant governor? Dr. Lee, I'm going to start with you on
Thank
that.
you.
No, I mean, honestly, it's still 50% a mystery for me, if I'm being quite honest. Just thinking about just the vow language and the vow activities and just kind of the way that he'll present himself in public. To me, just that high level and high lack of decorum is just disgusting to me. So I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the messaging is what really resonated with folks. We have to get real. When you have the messaging around pro-life, when you have the messaging around school choice, when you have the right messaging around that Second Amendment, you have galvanized a high majority of the population, because those are three primary buckets that a lot of the average American families care about.
Okay.
And a lot of that is due to, especially with the pro-life point, lack of understanding of what you're even saying when you're saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with, our Second Amendment right. Um, Thinking about, okay, well, anything that is saying anything around control and gun in the same sentence, that means that you're going to come into my house and take all the guns away. Like, that is one extreme or the other. And the same thing with school choice. And we're seeing that even here on the state level, with a lot of legislation that has gone forth around, private school vouchers being funded by public school dollars. But, a lot of those things resonate with our average families. And those were his main talking points. And so when you're we have to think about how, a lot of his notoriety came to be off a viral video talking about the Second Amendment. So, when you think about, the messaging points that he stuck to and how they mirrored the messaging points that we see on the federal level, it just worked. And he knew how to play the game. He knew how to play the game. He knew how to speak to certain constituents. And, folks just fell in line with it because they wanted to believe.
Had come out of nowhere to me.
But he did. But let me piggyback on what Dr. Lee said. So you had a couple of other things that was in play too, when he and then Representative Yvonne Holley, who was the Democratic candidate for lieutenant governor. When you look at the dynamics of our state, we are truly a purple state. One, but it does. And don't y'all jump all over me when I say this.
Okay.
His message is crazy, right? So take away the message, but his delivery is dynamic. He comes across very confident, very very charismatic, right? He knows how to command a room, command an audience, and then you put him against Yvonne Holley, who had more experience than him, but what did not raise as much money, was not capable of getting around and meeting and making as much of an inroads that she needed to do. So when you and then her presence and delivery style is very different from his.
Very
and
different.
so what you have is a North Carolina version of Trump and Hillary Clinton. Same thing with Trump. He knows how to command a room. He knows how, he understands messaging.
Yeah.
He knows how to bully, when he gets the space, he knows how to block his person out. Same thing. Hillary, when you put them side by side in terms of presentation, Trump he came across more confident. And so if we just strip away messaging, that's how we got here. That's how we got here at the national level. And that's what Mark has done. He overplayed her, he overspoke her, and then when we stay at home and don't vote, and we're not motivated, and we're not energized by the candidate, and we're looking at everything that is not as important, then we get Mark Robinson over Yvonne Holley. Now,
you want to be entertained 24/7. That's my issue. The entertainment factor of everything is just blows my mind.
Yes. Because it's easy to just add to Representative Baker's point. It's easy to listen to the loudest person in the room, but what are they saying? What is the content? What is the substance of what they're saying? And a lot of folks are not going to pause to listen to that. Because if you think about the average person's attention span, it's about a minute to 2 minutes. And so if you're catching my attention, you're charismatic, and you're, using your whole body to talk to me and all these different things, I may lock in. But if there's somebody that, may be more reserved, and I'm going to give you the facts this way, and everything that I'm saying is factual, it can progress us forward, but I'm not saying it correctly. I'm not saying it in an energetic way. Now you're boring. And now I don't want to continue to listen, but I'm actually giving you the information and the substance that you actually need. But a lot of people miss that because it's like, I want to see a viral video.
Right. That's exactly the point. Right. That's exactly it. And it's like we're doing everything for clicks and views. And I just heard somebody today, it was at church. It had to be at church because that's the only place I've been today, where they were talking about how so many of the young people how that no, it wasn't. It was in my NABJ meeting, National Association of Black Journalists Executive Board meeting. That's where I was. They were talking about how news is how kids, young people are just getting news, and they were saying how is it that we have students in journalism that want to be on TV, but yet they don't watch the news? Because that's the dichotomy that we're having as professionals, talking to students about the various professions and communications, and the kids aren't watching the news. And we're saying, well, how is it that you want to be on the news, but you don't want to listen or pay attention to the news? They
Because
want
they don't want to be on the news. They want to be on the stage.
That's it. That's exactly what we're talking about. And then we were talking about how when they're going through their social media, they're not even really reading all of it.
Right.
And we were talking about how were we going to in training them, like if we allowed them to do some of our social media as our organization to do like an internship thing, we thought, no, we can't allow them to post. We'll allow to see what they create, and if it's adequate enough, if it's researched right, if it's correct, then we will post it. I mean, it's just all of these things because these generations that we're bringing up, they're not attuned, and they're not paying attention, and they're not inhaling and digesting, and I don't know, the
But let me
information.
say, but let me say this. As an educator, right, who's still training teachers and administrators, I hang out with a lot of young people, right? And I said, we are trying to force them to do things the way we did things versus saying, let me step back and let's see how do they do things, because times are changing, and how we do things, how in the class, I'm gonna say in the classroom, how we did things in the classroom, we can no longer be effective in the classroom using those strategies. Uh, not we can't do them throw away all of them, but we have got to begin to pivot, because the way in which children are learning, the way in which they're getting information, how they do business now, means that we've got to work with the newer teachers coming in and figuring out how do we begin to morph. It's the same thing for you guys in journalism. Yes, the way that you've done things, that model is outdated. So versus trying to figure out how do we get them to be trained to do the things the way we did it, maybe the better conversation for you guys is to say, okay, we need to step back and take a look at this and how they're consuming information and how they are pseudo journalists already without the skills. So how do we need to morph to kind of meet what they need to be professional journalism, journalists that meet the new way of consuming news. God, I'm sorry, guys. I've been on the road all day today, consuming news. So our generation, the Bible talks about old men having dreams and young men having visions. And my interpretation of that is that the young people need the wisdom of the old people. The older people or the elders need the strength of the younger people. And right now, we've got to begin to help them navigate into this new reality. And that's kind of what we see going on, whether it's news consumption, whether it's educating, even with politicking. I tell people, young people get a bad rap because older people don't spend a lot of time talking to them. What they're not going to do is give away their vote. What they're not going to do is fall in a political line. They're not going to do it. And so we've got to talk to them about what's their issues, because they have issues. They may not be the things that we think are important to us, and indeed may not be things that are life and earth shaking, but it's important to them. And so we've got to find a way to connect with that and to be able to speak to them and give them a message of, I hear you. I may not understand it, but I'm willing to work towards it.
Wow. You guys in the chat, you guys are, ooh, they always have some great things. This, I want to pull up Zach's message here. And I'm pulling this up for a reason, Dr. Baker and Dr. Lee. He says that he saw on TikTok where he's talking about Mark Robinson, spoke at a black church. And the pastor said that he supported everything he said against the LGBTQ community. Now, you and I know the ad that is running now here in North Carolina that is showing Kamala Harris allegedly, because I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't seen anything to come out to refute it. And it's saying that she is in support of sex changes in prison for people who are trans, and that taxpayer dollars in essence could pay for it. I don't know if she really said that or not, but you and I know that an ad like that in North Carolina is, I mean, that's a real tough one, because we're very purple and we're very family, and that, when you talk about people, it's controversial, and it's taxpayers' dollars. You all know what ad I'm talking about. I wasn't able to find it. You know what I'm talking about? It's running a lot on TV.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. I don't know if Dr. Lee has seen it. I have heard about it.
Oh wow! Dang, now I wish I had pulled it.
No, because you don't need to run it. Because you don't need to give it life. I mean, I think we can have the conversation around the essence of it about giving them some free publicity. But I'll let Dr. Lee chime in, since I kind of went off on a tangent on the last question. I'll let her go, and then I'll come in behind her.
No, I mean, we love anything that you have to say, Dr. Baker, but I think it's in relation to the comment specifically. I do want to, because I saw the comment flash as we were having the conversation. And so thinking about the connection between comments around the LGBTQIA plus community in relationship to the Black church is a conversation. And it's a conversation that we don't like to have, don't want to have, because we don't ever want to shine that light on our faith-based communities and organizations, which I understand and respect. Right. However, this is an old and dated conversation in the Black church, in church, period. But if his comment was specific for the Black church. And so I'm not surprised to see or to hear this alignment around faith leaders aligning with commentary that relates to anti-LGBTQIA rhetoric, because we have had this kind of conditional comfortability when it comes to LGBTQIA. So we can be comfortable if they're a part of the music ministry. We can be comfortable if they're on the usher board. We can be comfortable if they're doing other things within the ministry. But once we get beyond that, once we can get beyond a point where we're essentially taking advantage of their talent or taking advantage of their gift, then it's like, oh, I didn't want to go that far. I just kind of wanted them to be my minister of music. I just kind of wanted them to direct the choir. I never intended for them to go beyond that. And so the real thought and emotion and kind of feeling that we see in faith-based organizations around that particular community is deeply rooted. And it has been for decades. And so a lot of times we see or hear conversations around LGBTQIA, kids or young adults leaving the church because they're not safe. They don't feel safe in these spaces. They are trying themselves to develop an authentic relationship with Christ. And they're thinking that they can do so safely in an organization, but a lot of times that is just simply not the case. And sometimes it's not even just the faith leader of that organization. A lot of times it's the congregation. It's the elder sitting at the front pew, disgusted with what they're seeing. It's the energy and the treatment that they get while they're there. And so, I definitely am not surprised to see that comment. I'm not surprised at that conversation because we have been trying to shovel that under the rug for decades and try to avoid it. energy isn't there, and it quite frankly is.
Well, and it piggybacks on the previous conversation that I just said about he understands audience, right? He understands that as audacious as that is, as dehumanizing as those statements were, as far out there as it was, he understands that in the Black church, we may not speak a lot of about that from over the pulpit, but we are pro-life. Is you'll hear them in a minute. Murder is a sin. We do condemn homosexuality as some great sin. So he understood in that church, in those churches, in front of those audiences, that message was going to play to that audience, because particularly in the Black church, we are extremely conservative in the Black church. And so though we know that, our faith walk is our own individual walk, and God does not rate sin. So sin is sin, regardless of what it is. It's personal, and you alone will have to stand for God, before God, and give an account. And some of these folks who are judging this, who's getting on this bandwagon, will have to stand account for that. So back to Robinson, he understands that. He understands messaging, and which I keep seeing this come up about how did we respond to the news that came out. Let me say this to people:
activity. We're gonna respond about that controversy.
Well, I was just gonna say, don't be distracted. Right? Yes. This man has been lieutenant governor for 4 years. Even as in the process of running, do you not think that the Republicans did a deep dive on him, seeing that he was right? And so my understanding is, at first they were blaming Josh Stein's campaign for leaking the information. CNN rebutted that and said it did not come from Josh Stein's campaign, but in fact came too. Yeah. Well, CNN did confirm that it did not come from Josh Stein's campaign. It in fact came from a Republican operative. Okay, let's say that.
Really?
But let's go one step further. What about that was so shocking to people? But you could fathom what he was saying about people being murdered and should be killed and shot, and calling to educators wicked, and talking about the people in the LGBTQ community being an abomination. We weren't outraged by any of that.
Right.
See, my is. So the question is, what do we think about it? Anybody who's been tuned in did not find what they found to be appalling, because we've been appalled all along. We've been outraged by his behavior and the things that he has said. Where we missed the opportunity to drive this point home is, what a hypocrite.
Right.
Because you're condoning the trans community and the LGBTA plus community, but then you talking about wanting to watch trans sex. And let me tell you how much I didn't even know what that was. I had to go say, what is that? Like, what? Right. Like, so if you got to research it and don't even know really what all it's saying, go back to point A. We know what you said. And so this information only lines up with what you already said. Here's the other thing. Timing is everything. That's why I'm telling people, pay attention. We don't care about what they found. We don't care about that. We are not going to get off message and start talking about that foolishness. And so everything is timing. Nobody from Republican leadership has come out and denounced him in North Carolina.
They sure haven't.
Nobody. Now, people are scrubbing their pages and all of that, but none of the ones who are scrubbing their pages still have not come out and condemned that. You know why? Because they already knew what that was. They already knew that was out here, and they don't mind making him the scapegoat, because they already know that his people, their voters, are going to line up rank and file and still vote for him. So releasing this and creating this big hoopla, again, Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Stay on message. Continue to talk about why we've got to push forward Democratic votes. Because I'm a conspiracy theorist. It's all playing into it. We're sidetracked over here, but nobody's talking about those $700,000, 700,000 votes that were purged. But we talking about his kinky sex life. I don't get. He's grown.
Right.
Grown people do what grown people do.
If his wife love it, I like it.
Well, his wife has had an abortion, but yet you want to deny other women from having an abortion. You know what I'm saying? So talk about it in the context of what he's going to take away, even though he's personally enjoyed it. You want to take away people's rights, but in the quiet corners of your secret life, you enjoy that life. Right? You want to take the rights away from women, but thank God when you and your wife had to make the decision, you had the opportunity to make that decision because that's what we should be talking about. I don't care about his personal life. Yeah. Because in the end, you've shown us who you are, and I believe it. All this did was, for me, just cemented in my mind that you're the wrong person to be in office.
Right. And Suzette Vernon brought up a very good point. She said what she took from the ad that I was talking about was that she was actually talking about medical care for people in prison, regardless of their gender identity, but it got cut and pasted into a different context. Okay. What we need to do, we really need to, I need our Democratic Party to do something about that, though. I really do.
Or better yet, get with the Democratic operatives who are running these ads and saying things that a political party couldn't say, and let them run the ads. Let them spend some of that money negating that and getting the proper messaging out, and let it fall under the banner of one of those organizations. Is what I would suggest. And I think that the Harris Walls campaign needs to stay on message. Let all of their money be spent on messaging, and let these other, that's me. But y'all know I'm just 4 years into a term, and I don't know. But I don't think we need to spend our money, because that's also their MO. They'll throw all this stuff out there and have us spin around our tails. So use your operatives to get out the messaging that you don't need to spend any money on.
Right. Dr. Lee, I want you to talk about this superintendent, Michelle Morrow, Dr. Lee. Tell the people who she is.
Yeah.
So here in the audience are from New York and Michigan and some other places. So tell them who Michelle Morrow is.
Yeah. So definitely a conservative, questionably qualified person in the state of. I know. I'm trying to be politically correct.
You don't have to on this. You don't have to on this show. You don't have to. But if you try to be politically correct, they're gonna come for you, sister. So
I know. But I mean, absolute extremists. Just the viewpoints. The viewpoints that they hold. I mean, again, it's just more alignment with what we're seeing on the federal level. Like, everybody is on the same message. If you think about it, you're thinking about Trump, thinking about Robinson, you're thinking about Morrow. Everybody is on the same exact messaging points in the same tone. And so when we're thinking about, her and thinking about just kind of the mindset, the disgusting mindset, and someone that does not really value K-12 public education. So what are you in this position? What is this position for? Like, exactly. Right. Like, what is the end goal with this position? When you don't even care about what the core of the role is. And we're seeing that so much with this push to get funds, to get everything out of public schools. Like, we don't need to keep public schools funded. We don't need to make sure that public school students have a quality education. We don't need to make sure that they have the resources that they need. And we're going to direct all of that to our private schools, and schools that we know our Black and brown communities, rural communities, on average, are not going to be able to access. If you look at the state of North Carolina, you look at how many private schools we have across the state, they are not located in the areas where we have the highest population of Black folks, brown folks, rural folks, low-income folks. That is not who lives there. And so this kind of narrative around, this will open up the door for everybody. Who is everybody? Who is everybody? And so she is in alignment with that push and that shift to, hey, we need to focus our energy more on private education and steer away from our K-12 education, because that will result in creating less resources for the communities that she simply does not value. When you're thinking about our children, those are the communities that she does not value. And so she's really an implant to make sure that we keep everything going in that direction. It's all a big game. Everybody's a player in a big game of making sure that we are diluting those resources. She's just one of the many players to make sure that we are going in that route.
Dangerous player. I saw not billboards. What do you call those little lawn signs? I saw them on a major thoroughfare here in Durham. And Durham is as blue as you can get in North Carolina.
But they don't care.
And she had her little pink and blue signs, girl. I said, what are these signs doing up over here in the hood? They were over across from a church. I sure saw it on Fayetteville Road.
Well, Trump's people have done the same thing in East Winston and here in Winston. It's the same thing. Visual, people say signs don't vote, people vote, but people, that's a strategy, right?
Yeah.
And so they see those signs repeatedly. Mo Green does not have a lot of signs out there yet. Correct, but they will remember her name when they go in, and they will remember seeing her name when they go in. And I'm gonna say Dr. Lee, because she got to keep her good government job. Let me make it plain for the people who are listening. This woman's children have never attended public school.
Right.
She has no idea what that job entails. She attended January 6th.
Yes, she did.
Right.
Say that again.
Yes. You keep your good government job.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying.
She don't know what the job entails. When she has been asked questions, she can't answer them. Not only does she want to dismantle, where have we heard this, Project 2025, public education and the whole Department of Education in North Carolina. She is complicit with what the Republican legislators are doing in the Senate and in the House. They are systematically defunding public education. It started 10 years ago by increasing class sizes, reducing support personnel, freezing teacher salaries. Yes. So this has been a 10-year plan. And now what we've seen, when we went into session a few weeks ago, the only thing that we dealt with was adding $500 million more into the voucher program. When you look at who's going to be penalized the most, it's going to be our rural communities, because they already don't have the tax base to even pay their teachers a higher. So for those of you who are watching, teachers all in North Carolina, we have a standard pay scale. But what makes up the difference is what is called supplement pay. And that is paid through our county taxes. And so the counties that have stronger tax bases can pay higher supplement pay to teachers. Our rural communities often that have lower tax base or doesn't have a strong economy cannot make up the difference that the larger counties with the stronger economies can. And so this idea of shifting public dollars away into private vouchers and continuing to put in rules and laws in place around curriculum around penalizing administrators who don't follow rules, around criminalization of our students by increasing police presence with SROs in our middle and high schools, and taking away the authority of our administrators to be able to determine what the outcome should be of an infraction that occurs in the school, that the SRO can decide that a suspension is not enough and decide to charge a child in a fight with simple assault, thereby putting our children in the system, because we already know they're not going to do that to our white students, but most certainly will do it to our Black students. So how Morrow even got here is that the previous superintendent, who was Republican, was not radical enough. And so they decided
Who
to
was
run
that?
somebody,
I don't even remember.
Truitt, Catherine Truitt.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
so that's how we got here. Again, they are very loyal, meaning Republican voters. They understand the messaging because we're hearing it nationally. We know that they get their matching orders from ALEC. So when you start to hear some of the same issues and concerns and the same messaging in a variety of states, that's because they have when they go to their national convention, they get their marching orders. They get the drafts of the bills that they need to file in their respective chambers. And so that's how they have unity of messaging. And so when Catherine Truitt wouldn't fall in line with that, they went and found somebody that would. And so that's how we've gotten to this point. The really crazy thing is that Mo Green has been a superintendent. He has been, I worked under him in Charlotte when he was the general counsel to the Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. He has headed one of the largest foundations, not only in the state, but indeed in the nation, whose focus has been around social issues and ensuring that we have quality program. So when you stack up their resumes, remember I said twice as hard, twice as, he should be blowing her out. But
Yeah.
he's
Where Javita, Dr. Lee, where are we at with that, with the Mo Green? Mo Green, by the way, guys, he's a Black gentleman who is running for superintendent that Dr. Baker just told us about his qualifications against this woman who is a MAGA extremist with zero qualifications, who even said something about killing Obama. Didn't she state that be
that
killed?
he should, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
all of that. And she's a January 6er. Do you know, Javita, where that race stands?
It's about a 2-ish% difference. Last I was able to check earlier this month, it's about a 2-ish% difference, with Mo just barely actually getting over Marrow, but there's still like an outstanding of over 20% of undecided. So like there's still that big gap of they could go either way. But that is currently where we stand.
Of error. That's
exactly. And so it's way too close to get comfortable, but just over a 2% difference between the race. But I think, kind of thinking about what we talked about, this whole conversation is around making sure that we're investing and supporting these candidates, but that requires resources. And if we're really going to talk about the thing out loud, then we need to talk about how not just the party, but also these organizations like mine and others that are designed to help the overall machine. Right. If we're not resourced, if we're not getting what we need, then there is nothing to divide up. There is nothing in the bank to be able to go and support everyone else. And so a lot of our support has to look like fish fries or things that we know how to do, because we don't, it's not as sustainable as we see on the other side. And so like, that's also a part of this conversation too, is it's the qualification, and it's also the resources. We have well-qualified candidates, but if we don't have the manpower and also the resource power to support them in the way that they deserve, that's also going to cause this further divide when we see the polling and we see how the race is going.
And people Black people in particular, we just don't give. We don't. And I've talked about this on this show and others. As a woman of color, a Black woman, running for my third term, I have never raised the kind of money that I needed to successfully run my race. This race is about a $50,000 race, and it's difficult. It's difficult, and I don't have the manpower. I don't. I mean, you go. I was thinking about you reading my bio today. All of that's pulled from my website. That is what I put on there the first time I ran. It needs to be updated. It needs to reflect a person who is now elected to an office, not somebody running to the office, but the amount of money that it costs to pay for somebody to to redesign my webpage and to monitor it and to keep it updated. I don't raise enough money to do that. I don't, and people don't understand that. And I even have to say to people who say, "Oh, you'll be fine. You're in a safe district." One, there's no such thing as a safe district, and two, it still costs money to be in elected office. So what Dr. Lee is saying is that people have lots to say about what people who's running for office should do and what they need to do and how they need to be on messages and how we need to do X, Y, and Z. But very few people will even give a dollar. It's not about equal giving. It's about equal commitment. And to run a statewide race, I've never run one, but I have 77,000 constituents. I have a fourth of my county. If I'm struggling to run in a county with 77,000 constituents for a $50,000 race, in order for Mo Green to be competitive with what he's coming up against tomorrow, see, she don't have to go out there and raise money, because the Republicans are going to pour money into her campaign. They're going to make sure she has the resources that she needs, and he's just not going to get that same support from the party or otherwise. And I said it out loud.
Out loud. Wow. Suzette had a question here of, are we going to talk about the ludicrousness of Sarah Huckabee Sanders? I have to, this changes subject. That's a long question, but I have to say that I was really surprised at that comment that she made, because it was so, these people call themselves Christians. That's the big thing. And they say the most ugly, insensitive, immoral things that I don't get it. That's the only thing I can say about her. That was
just seen the comments. I didn't actually hear what she said.
She said that how she has to be accountable to her children. See, because she's given birth to, I guess, 2 kids. And she made the comment to infer that since Kamala Harris had not had any children, she doesn't have any accountability to children and to know what they need and that type of thing. And so a whole lot of people went after her, talking about that there's stepmothers that do it, their aunties that, that take care of children.
Y'all missed the point.
I know.
Here's what I would have said to her. You got children, but what you gonna say to your children when they see how you have behaved and how you have conducted? See, we let them draw us into battles that take us out our game.
Yeah.
You know what? We don't have to defend Vice President Harris on not being a traditional parent in the way that we think motherhood is. She is the mother to her now adult children that she got when she married Doug.
Right.
We get that. Don't lose sight of that foolishness. Flip it on her. Why are you even talking about this? Why are you even engaged? How you have run that state, how you have continued to degrade the people who are the poorest in your state, how you, when you were the press secretary, you couldn't even tell the truth. How you gonna talk to your kids about being truthful and being honest and having integrity when nothing about your public face is saying that? What does your daddy say about you? Because even your daddy wasn't as radical as you are. Even your daddy wasn't that disrespectful. So how you think your daddy feels about you and your disrespectful self? Flip it around.
Showy Howie, she lives in a red state. Not in a, she lives in a red section of the great state of Michigan, and she's calling her evangelical KK Christians.
Yeah.
Who?
Sarah.
She's saying that about Sarah Huckabee.
Yes, y'all making my blood pressure going up.
No, but I mean,
I'm trying to be elected like.
But I mean, there is something to say about that comment, though. If you think about it like that, I mean, it's just yet another jab at how we define womanhood. Because a lot of times we equate, oh, you're not actually a woman until you become a mother or until you become fill in the blank. And that's just simply not the case. People make decisions all the time about what womanhood will look like for them. And some folks are forced into decisions, and we need to be mindful of that too. So we really have no background information on like how that even came to be, but kind of Right, exactly, because we're not entitled to that information, but we kind of go off assumption and we see the value and the worth of a woman based in, are they a mother yet? Are they married yet? Are they this? And it's like, well, there's a lot more to womanhood than those two things. And so, yeah.
And again, if we stick on messaging, okay, so you answer to your children and you're pro-life, but Arkansas is one of the lowest states when it comes to education, in terms of upward mobility for poor folks, in terms of supporting resources for children in poverty. So shut up talking to me. Yeah. Because you have children, but that don't make you a good mama. Not every parent that has a child is a good mother, and your behavior, I don't care how you treat your children in your home, your behavior is not respectable. It is not. You can, when your children get older and can see and have own opinions, you better hope and pray that they don't hold that against you in terms of what you've done or failed to do to make lives better for the least of these.
Right. That's period. Right.
Full stop. And there's been when Vice President Harris's children by choice talk about her, when her husband's ex-wife talks about her and how she has parented or co-parented those children together, they have nothing but good things to say about her. And so that's the end of that conversation. And that's how we should approach it. We should stop giving airtime to people who say things to get us off messaging. We don't care. We take and turn it around and keep moving. That's what we've got to do. We can't keep putting off on these side journey conversations because it pulls us away from messaging, and then we get caught up in a fruitless conversation because in 30 seconds she already is not relevant. 30 seconds she's gonna go back into obscurity.
Yeah. All right. Okay. What shall we have? I drew the line at the 9th commandment. If you lie, if they share and spread lies, I will not listen to them. All right. All right. Listen, guys, it's 7 minutes after 9. We have had a wonderful conversation with you two ladies. I tell you, we have gone to task. The audience, you guys have been great with your commentary and questions, or really, they are always great, always on fire and on point, and they know their politics. They know their politics. I appreciate you guys so much. Anybody listening to this on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you're listening on Facebook or LinkedIn, hit the thumbs up, share the video, share it everywhere, because we do this for educational purposes, and we've got 36 days.
No, we got 18. October 17th is early voting. Okay. Check your registration. Go vote. Do not go alone. And to bring us full circle with Dr. Lee, Take care of your organization. Deliver your constituents. If you're Divine Nine, I don't understand financial and all that, but if they're on your rolls, that's who you should be calling, making sure that they get to the polls. Churches, call the people that have not shown up. Do wellness checks. And while you do the wellness check, ask them if they're registered to vote and if they have a way to the polls. And those of us who got a little bit of time, go into your local party, write some postcards, make a few phone calls, but most of all, y'all, vote during early vote, because this is our time, one, to fix any problems, and two, once your names come out of the databases, we can focus on those people who we don't know if they have a plan for voting. And again, even though early voting starts October 17th, if you have a few dollars to give in North Carolina, if you have a few dollars to give, support a candidate, because I'm telling you right now, those of us that are in races, we're scrambling to get pennies together to get the messaging out. And yes, and I'm sorry I couldn't let us close without that. That's my clarion call to everybody. Focus on your constituency and everything will be taken care of.
All right.
I'm
I'm
done.
Well, I appreciate you both, Dr. Javita Lee. Don't be a stranger. Please make sure you come back.
Yes,
make sure you come back. And prayerfully, the next time we see you guys, we'll be talking about something. We'll be talking about the victories. All right.
Yes.
That's
right.
Some kind of celebration of some sort, because this goes on for real. All right. Let's wave good night to everyone. Good night, everybody. Thumbs up. Subscribe.